It should be compensated. It depends what what way you mean.
Yeah.
Some people think that they should be repaid in other ways. Like there's the whole debate with them, getting into school easier and all that.
Yeah.
There's lots of debates about that.
There's so much injustice.
Depends how you mean that they should be repaid.
Right.
Monetarily, yeah, they probably should for being exploited.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, sure. Yeah, I mean, they're giving money to people from concentration camps, so maybe if they had the money, why not? Yeah.
So, I mean, I live in Australia and they're doing a similar thing with the Aboriginal people.
Okay.
But I mean, they're not going through like lawsuits exactly. They're just, trying to give the Aboriginals the land back that's stolen. And the real problem with it is they're not giving back the land that's got all like the emerald and jade mines on it. They're keeping that stuff. They're just giving them scrap of land up to the north. So it completely defeats the purpose of doing it in the first place. They're just giving them a worthless piece of land. You can't grow anything on. No one wants to live there, so it's sort of like lip service.
The debt is calculated to be $777 trillion.
Almost as much as the debt that Bush has amassed in the United States. Half a trillion, 500 million. No, 500 billion. Yeah. I think something to think about.
I'm still indecisive about reparations, actually, because there's positive and negative aspects of it. The positive things is that people are going to get back money from the suffering of the past, but the negative things is that, people are saying that they should get over this, their past and whatnot. So there's both negative and positive aspects, so I'm a little bit indecisive about that.
Okay.
For me, it's not about getting over it. You got to recognize what happened, like atrocities of the past. You can't just say, well, you know what happened in the past, let's get over it. It's not about that. However, what I disagree with is this whole, handout thing. Someone has to, if you're going to give reparations to black people, you have to do it in a structured way. You have to get people together, organize people together to set up some sort of system of how they're going to use these funds. I don't want to see a check in the mail. Right now, our community is failing. There's a lot of brothers and sisters who aren't in school. There's a lot of people into drugs, either on drugs, selling drugs. Our community is in a poor state. We have to look at our infrastructure first before you can start saying, well, here, you know what, the Miller family is owed a couple $1 million, or the Johnson family is owed $10 million. You can't just hand money out like that because we don't even know how to organize our money. We don't know how to spend our money. So somebody has to be responsible for that. Some sort of government has to be in place who's going to handle the allocation of these funds.
Apart from the allocation of funds, what's also important is just simply educating people what reparations is. Because a lot of people don't know what it is. And I mean, there could be movements saying, yes, support reparations, but people don't even really know what the money is really representing. And in order for people to take a viewpoint and a stand on if they're for or against reparations, they need to have that education on exactly what it is.
I don't think they'll ever get any money.
No.
I don't think so, which is really tragic. But, the descendants of the slave owners would say, well, we're not responsible. That kind of thing.
Okay.
Which is wrong.
This is much easier for them to deal with that over there in the Middle East and in Iraq than it is with us. So to deal with us is like...
It is,
so it's
some
like,
high trigonometry and...
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure they're kind of glad for this. I'm sure they're glad for that. No, people don't have to deal with this. Yeah, because no, they have to take out the moral high road on this. That's the only way, really. Yeah, you can throw money at it, but it's not about the money. I mean, yes, so they give us money, but if they still walk down the street and move when they see you, then what good is that? Like, what good is that? Yeah, I mean, take some money, but, I think we should have investments in all the companies that are making money off of us, investments in schools, but it's, they gotta do something about the whole psychological.
The word reparations is taken from the French word meaning to repair. In the English dictionary, reparations means compensation exacted from a defeated nation by the victors or compensation given or received for injury or insult. For example, at the height of African slavery, the British Empire's annual revenue was £30 million. The island of Jamaica was accountable for 18 million pounds of the empire's annual earnings through the then colony's major exports of sugar and rum. At slavery's end, Jamaican estate owners received over 6 million pounds of compensation money for the loss of the African slave workforce. In total, 20 million pounds was distributed throughout the entire empire. Meanwhile, ex-slaves were left to fend for themselves.
I was fortunate to visit Africa, and I saw in some of the dungeons where the slaves were kept for sometimes up to 6 weeks. And they used to put them standing on each other's shoulder, 3 abreast, standing on shoulder of one another. They would be there eating, sleeping, and defecating on each other in this hall that they were kept, or dungeons where they were kept for transportation to a new world. One of the person that was giving us the rundown of what transpired, he said that as the people died, they were not taken out and be buried. They just were left there and decayed. And he said from people over the years dying and leaving and decaying on the floor, it has risen 3 feet from its original setting. About 3 feet of people or persons dying left there to decay. So you can, first of all, picture in your mind that kind of decadence, that kind of debauchery that transpired in these dungeons. And then to wait. And then the place that they were kept, it was dark. They couldn't see on the outside. The only time they were allowed to see light is when they were on their way to the New World. They were put in ships and brought into the Americas, into the Caribbean. And to serve a people, we believe, according to scriptures, taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammed, that is fulfillment of what is written in the scripture. The word today, that what we know as called picnic, was really and truly pick a nigger. They used to tie a man. They would take him with them to the field. Then they would tie him up on a tree. And oftentimes they would go by, cut a piece of his ear, cut a piece of his toe, and they would cut him like that to pieces. And that eventually he would bleed to death. So these are some of the atrocities that were perpetrated on the original man, the black man. Today, we don't want to talk about it because it's painful. But we should never forget. We can forgive those that perpetrated this act, but to forget it, that's a wrong. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us history are best rewarded for the researcher. So when we research our history and know, then we can say, never again would we be allowed for such an act to go on. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of agony. And no one's like to speak or like to remember pain and agony. So we try to forget, or we try to put it away or put it aside. But it all affecting the way we live today. our children are suffering from self-hate because of slavery. That they will look on each other without any remorse and to shoot, to maim, to destroy the one that we might seems to be our enemy. Our enemy today is not black. Our enemy today is lack of knowledge of self, because we were devoid of our history. In terms of reparation, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, not speaking about monetary gain, but he would, in the final call, he speak about reparation in the form of America giving us 25 years of supply, giving us a fertile ground so that we can plant, we can do for ourselves. And with 25 years of aid for what we have given them, in fact, I will read it. This is what the Muslims want. Number 4. We want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descended from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land, that the area must be fertile and mineral rich. We believe our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years until we are able to produce and supply our own needs. Since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality after giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, we believe our contribution to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justify our demand for complete separation in a state or territory of their own. We want freedom from all beliefs of Islam now held in federal prison. We want freedom for all black men and women now under death sentence in the prisons, in the north as well as in the south. We want every black man and woman to have freedom to accept or reject being separated from the slave master children and establish a land of their own. This is what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We believe he is a divine man who met with God. And his instruction to us today is being full. If we look at Message to the Black Man and Fall of America, everything that he has written in this book is coming to pass. We need to unite. Willie Lynch has worked his magic, but we must kill his magic today. First, we must know who we are, the God we represent, and our mission to establish a righteous kingdom on this earth for Allah God. God never made us niggers. Cool. He said, let's make man in our likeness and in our image. So if we are of God in his likeness and in his image and has been deprived of that, then there are consequences for someone's action. But we must get back to knowledge of self. So come join us, come hear us, come hear the Honorable Minister Luz Farrakhan teach us the proper knowledge of self. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, well, we've had several claims. We have approximately 22 claims. And so far we've had two settled and one in the process of being settled. One was for a railroad, which we got something like $90,000 for. The other one was 200 acres in Mississauga that was never surrendered, and they had taken possession of it. And that was settled back in, I believe, 1998. That claim was settled for $12 million. Now that $12 million is sitting in trust now, and it's we're trying to get a per capita distribution, hopefully by the end of this year, to all our community members. We can only touch the interest of that trust. We can't touch the principal of the money. So that $12 million will always be there for generations to come. So when I'm gone and you know, a lot of us aren't here anymore, that money will still be there for this community to use. And there's only 5 areas under which you can use it with, and it's health and recreation, infrastructure, those kinds of things. You can't use it for wages. They can't use it to pay my wage or anybody else here. Can't be used for anything like that. It has to go into the community. And before money can be spent out of the trust, band council can spend up to $299,000, but anything over and above that, it has to go to a community vote. The community has to agree that that money can be spent on certain things. So it's not something that band council have the authority to go ahead and spend all that money. They can't do that. And that's a good way to have controls on the budget and on your funding, because we want that money to be there, like I said earlier, for everybody later on. The next claim that we have is the Toronto Purchase, specific claims for Toronto. Now that's not asking for any land back, that's asking for compensation. And right now we're just in the preliminary stages of that. We're not at the point where we're discussing any monies or anything like that. We're doing protocol agreements, how the negotiations are going to be handled, how the money, how the value is going to be brought forward, how we're going to do that, you know, what we're looking at as far as the value of the land. Maybe we'll need to get a study done to make that determination. We don't know yet. So right now, we're just in the very preliminary stages of that. We're hoping that it would take probably another year, maybe another 2 years to come to some resolution on that land claim. There's all kinds of land claims that have been successful, especially out west. And there's been some small settlements up north, you know, that have land and have gotten compensation, have gotten land back. Wata First Nation up around Bala were successful in getting some of their land back. Tyandonega around Peterborough were successful in getting some compensation and some tracts of land back for land claims. Some very small claims, of course. Ours, right now, the Toronto Purchase, is probably the largest claim in Canadian history right now that's being negotiated. In the United States, that there's been some negotiations and some dialogue going on with the government over there about compensation for the wrongdoings that were done to them. And if you're asking me my own personal opinion, I'd rather not give that. The only thing I can say is I think they have to be treated in a fair manner, the same as any other group of people. I think the injustices that were done to them were terrible, the same as the injustice that were done to First Nations people and anyone that tried to interfere with the status quo at the time. So, you know, I think fair justice has to be done all across the board, to everyone.
Okay.
It was important for us to understand that despite the fact that we did do all the research and everything, that there was a chance that this may not be accepted as a valid claim, and initially it wasn't. We went back to the drawing board and did a bit more research back in the late 80s and represented our position to the government. And as of last July 2002, our claim was accepted as a compensation claim, where they had a legal obligation to make restitution to us for the injustice that was done back in 1805. And you know, that process was frustrating at times. You know, with the amount of research involved, all the roadblocks or blocks that they put in the way, you know, just to kind of discourage you from your duty as far as getting the research for an adequate and acceptable claim. So, you know, so it can be frustrating. Mm-hmm. You know, my advice to anybody that is doing something like that is don't give up. You know, even though they may put roadblocks or give you all kinds of excuses that the documents aren't available or whatever, I think if you persist in your activities, you'll get a good end result. But you really have to really push, and sometimes to the point of almost being indignant with some of the people that are turning you down for information. So it can be hard.
Like the native peoples of Canada and others who have made and received claims of reparations, why are people in the African diaspora ignored? Are the world crises, such as the 9/11 attacks or the war on terrorism, overshadowing advancement on New World reparations? Many more communities have and are still receiving reparations, but the question still seems to remain unanswered. What about black people? In the summer of 2002, England's Queen Elizabeth II visited Jamaica. The visit cost the Jamaican government millions of Jamaican dollars as she attended ceremonies and functions of a state visit. Also in attendance were movements of Rastafarians who petitioned her through Jamaica's public defender, Howard Hamilton, Queen's Counsel. Hamilton handed her the Rastafarians' demands for both reparations and repatriation back to Africa. January 2003, she finally responded with a letter that stated, "A body of independent experts is advising the Home Secretary on the most appropriate form of UK commemoration. The aim is to express the profound regret we feel about slavery while looking positively to the future. Under the statute of the International Criminal Court, acts of enslavement committed today do constitute a crime against humanity, but the historic slave trade was not a crime against humanity or contrary to the international law at the time when the UK government condoned it. It is a fundamental principle of international law that events have to be judged against the law as it stood at the time when they occurred. We regret and condemn the inequities of the slave trade, but these shameful activities belong to the past. Governments today cannot accept responsibility for what happened over 150 years ago."
We were innocently taken captive, and by any means necessary we have to return to our royal liberty, return to our royal standards, because repatriation is a must. So now mentally, physically and spiritually we shall return by the will of the Most High. So regardless if they want to help us or not, financially, physically, in any form, you know, mentally, spiritually, regardless if they want to help us or not, the work of the Most High will continue and it must be done.
Where you think she's living? Where you think she's living off? Africa. She's living off Africa and its people. The Queen of England is living off Africa and its people. And the United States also is living off Africa and its people. You know, see, the whole of the North America and Europe. You want to know how much money did Europe did have before slavery? And after slavery, you know how their economy rise? You know, see, so...
She says she wants to make a commemoration
make some sort of a commemoration.
Commemoration?
What's a commemoration?
What you mean by commemoration? Eh? See, listen.
They're working on it.
All the millions that died on the passage and also died on the plantations and so on. What she talk about? Eh? If Rasta gets serious and the rest of black people in the world get serious, then she will say, you know, see, because they pay off everybody up to whores who they discriminate against. They pay them off. Except black people.
And the Jews get
now they're charging black people with the crimes that they have already committed. Rape and all these things. You know them rape our mothers and our sisters. And even the little girl, them rape them at the age of 8.
Not even the mother. I don't think white people give black people nothing. I don't think so.
Hey, them negative talk. You come like when a man say you don't think we can unite. And them negative talk. If it's talk on solid ground, don't say you don't think. We not beg white people for nothing. We just have to have the pressure.
We not get none from them. As long as not in our generation, we not live for
no apology, no repatriation.
No, because hey. Listen. If you keep talking like that, you don't mean your own people don't.
You don't mean my own people don't.
No apology, no repatriation till it never happened.
Give me no reparation. White men ain't giving me shit.
Nothing.
Because of the situation of black people, right? Because of the situation of the black people and the black people in our right, you know. Yeah, because of the division. So you know, expect. But if the unity could come, then you'll see.
Rasta man. First thing you hear the virgin that said, Queen Elizabeth right back to Rasta them and said she don't respond for what take place.
Did the Rasta them answer her back until her say she responds? Eh? Because her mother responds with that. Her mother was one of the starred leader in the slave trade business. You know, see?
Because when they accept responsibility, then that's their. Now they have to really start coming up with ways of how they're going to compensate all of us. And they could never. They'll have to all move out of Africa and just give us all their riches.
Well, I'm not surprised that the Queen would say no to reparations. Everybody's been avoiding the issue. There was a big conference the year that the World Trade Center got destroyed. There was a large conference in South Africa. It totally got forgot about because it was right at the time of the buildings getting licked down. So, which I find just a little bit too mysterious for my taste. But anyways, everybody forgot about it, and now they're just trying to keep it as water under the bridge. Everybody knows this is the biggest Holocaust that ever happened. You know what I mean? The Jewish people have received their money for the Holocaust that they went through. Yes, so we haven't received what our dues, because I don't know, maybe they can't pay us back for what has been done, but they have to acknowledge it in some way other than just saying it happened.
Slavery back in the days was a very disturbing sight to see, because moms were deprived and their belly was cut and bet money to see if they're gonna have a kid or they're gonna have a boy or a girl. Let me correct myself. The reason for this slavery is because the society was all concealed of criminals, liars and thieves. And the society was falling because everyone was greedy, so they need to go out and take from others to bring back to their, because they're not creators, they're robbers. They don't create, they rob from other societies to build yourself stronger. So they're bloodsuckers. Instead of they till the soil and plant seeds, they go and kill an animal and eat the flesh. To show you how simple it is, they're robbers, they're not creators. We're black people that till the soil and plant the seed so that food can grow for our young ones and for ourselves.
It's wrong because the law did not say that it was legal to enslave Africans. People did it, but it wasn't legal. So that argument there, as far as I'm concerned, is nonsense, that it was legal at the time. I would like someone to read me chapter and verse of which law was passed by the British Parliament that said the enslavement of Africans during the time that they were enslaved was legal. And the fact that Europeans, whether they were French, British, Portuguese, Germans, or whoever, the fact that Africans worked without being paid means that we are owed reparations. And this is something that we have to keep pushing, because if we do not, if we drop this, then our descendants will never be able to do anything, because we are at a point now where, because of the internet, and we're able to connect because of the global village, because the world is now one huge global village, we are able to learn from other Africans in other places about what their ancestors suffered. For instance, there are a lot of people who do not know that they're Africans in South America and in Central America, but in all those countries, Africans were enslaved and Europeans gained from their labor. And when slavery was abolished, and I'm speaking specifically about in the British colonies, and I'm sure it happened in other colonies also, but in the British colonies, the slaveholders were paid. They were compensated. They received reparations for losing their property, which is our ancestors. So we have to get reparations. We have to. The state that we as a people are in today is directly linked to the enslavement of our ancestors and the fact that their labor enriched Europeans. That is why we can have European billionaires who have benefited from the fact that our ancestors labored and their ancestors collected the money. When you think of people laboring in the fields, whether it's cotton or sugar cane, and the money that came from there for these huge estates, and that money is handed down from generation to generation to now where the descendants of the people who enslaved our ancestors still have that money in their clutches. And they were able to spend that money to expand their riches even more. And we have been struggling since the abolition of slavery. And we are nowhere close to a level playing field. And it's directly linked. So reparations, we have to continue to fight for. We must continue to fight for reparations, or we are letting our ancestors down. Because I am sure that they were thinking after slavery was abolished that they would get some kind of compensation.
Sure as white man get for them one and the Jews get for them, so why not the black man get free right? We're supposed to get money, not even money. We're supposed to get equal right and justice from this land. And that we are defend. Not only the white man control all things and the black man control nothing. Right? So if they not change the system, it will always bring problem. As a black youth, them just stay in the city and walk up and down and have a job. And it's always bring pressure to them brains and poor people always down. So they better do something about it soon, except they gotta get dreaded.
We made this country, we need to get something out of it. Because when it was time to build, we built. And it's now time to be paid. We need to be paid. All of us. All of us, not just one nation or one people. Everybody.
About the representation towards embarrassing of what we have gone through for 400 years and still going through it mentally and both spiritually. The government is a fuck up, to be straight about it. We're still under a spiritual and a physical slavery. Yes, I agree that they owe us, because the Jews have get them share, the Indians have get them share, and many others. But we, fourth-class citizens in a concrete jungle, trying to survive. Yes, we are under bondage. We still are under slavery, but into a spiritual and a physical way. I agree that we should all get a unification credit for what our ancestors go through. And this time, right now, to free our mind and our spirit. It is not talking about the money, you know. It's more talking about a spiritual freedom to knowing who and what we are. That we can more unify in the love of Jah.
I say that we have to take this to the High Council, UN, by the black leaders, so they reimburse all the slaves, not their money. If they don't, we have to fight them.
Probably, fundamentally, is one of the most significant movement to build on for this generations to come. I think there are a number of reasons. One, it will allow ourselves to build self-confidence in ourselves. And it's not just, and people should realize that when someone says reparations, it's not just about the money, it's restoring the dignity that we as a people had, our ancestors had, before it was destroyed by the enslavement of our people. I think the amazing disruption of families, the destruction of the continent, the fact is I'm currently trying to, as an example, I'm currently trying to trace my ancestral roots, and I know for a fact that even if I get off the island of Jamaica, it's not much further back than that, because families have been so destroyed. There's absolutely no way sometimes of linking back. So I think one of the things that we need to do as a people is to regenerate confidence in ourselves, to restore the spirit that once was. And I think that is one of the things that reparations, this is for me, is what reparations is all about. Yes, a number of companies and countries have built up enormous economies as a result of the enslavement of our people. And I think that, yes, they do owe it to us to help to do that, to restore our dignity, to restore, and tell the truth about the whole thing. So it is probably the most valuable, the most important thing that we could do. I mean, it goes beyond black power. It goes beyond all of the things that we gelled around in the past. This fundamentally means restoring our dignity and spirit.
Some people just want to get on with life. You know what, life? I mean, if we were enslaved and we say to the former slave masters, you owe something, whether it be monetary, whether it be land, whether to forget debts that other black nations owe to the imperialists. We need to get out of this indebtedness that has occurred because of lack of opportunities, okay? Our land were taken away from us, our people were enslaved, and we have lost some of our cultural heritage. We need to be paid for all of that so that our future generation can build a better life for our children.
it is not a begging thing. It's not that we are going to be begging for something that, you know, is not owed to us. Reparation is not only something that we need to go out and spend it on drugs, or it's something to build the black race. So to go on with life as nothing has happened is a fallacy. Something has happened. We were enslaved, we were brutalized, we were tortured. Other people have gotten reparations. The Jews have had reparations and continue to get reparation for their so-called Holocaust. Our Holocaust was 10 times worse than the Jewish Holocaust. And yet we have not received any reparation for the sufferings that our forefathers suffered.
Why do we keep forgetting to put the pressure on reparations? Like the issue comes up and then it dies down, and it seems like...
Well, many of us do not realize the importance of reparations. Some of us do not understand the economic effect that reparations would have on our community and upon our people. Part of the management of such reparations is also a factor, where people say, how are we going to distribute this money among ourselves? What are we going to do with it? How is it going to be spent? And some people may believe that we are going to give individual money, and that is not my view of reparation. Reparations is to build community, to build institutions, to build industries within black countries and black communities for the benefit of our people. We must be educated. People should understand that education on the issue of reparation is very important. I may not live to see reparation being paid to the black race, but then if the campaign for the payment of reparation is continued, then future generations will achieve that goal. I mean, some people don't want to talk about reparations. The Americans do not want to talk about it. And other European countries do not want to admit that they owe us anything. But pressures must be brought on those who were former slave masters, whose children enslaved, or whose parents enslaved, or our parents, to pay the debt.
To start a government, the amount that they're not lending you, this would have been a very different country. A very, very different country. Not just Jamaica, I'm thinking the world at large. Because what I'm saying here now applies to all the third world countries. It's a pattern of history. They needed something, but why they not just, they shouldn't get it just because they needed it. They should have got it because they earned it. The ancestors have never been paid for the facts that we remain poor while they became rich. Our ancestors were never paid, not the descendants, that we only got one university when they had 10, 15, 20 universities to keep ahead of us. And therefore we say at this stage, you've got your emancipation, yes, you're free men. We've got our independence, yes, we've got a government. We now ask for reparations because we say the debt has not been paid, the books have not been closed. And for reparations, I'm not asking for money. I think, what, a few minutes left? Oh yes, I have to stop so you can ask questions. You're not asking for money, because you're going to ask me how much money you want, from who, and who's going to pay it, etc., etc. I have answers for those. I am saying this, that reparations is not asking for money because people are guilty. We are asking for reparations because they are responsible for the positions that we are relative to themselves, and it can take forms other than money. For instance, if the governments were to say to the third world debt countries like we are, we free you from the debts tomorrow, your debts are free, you know what that would mean for Jamaica if we were free of foreign debts? You know what that would mean to Omar Davis and the others if we didn't have to pay that interest and that debt? You know what it would mean for your development? Just one thing, that is reparation, but here, you may say, wait, it's going to be millions and millions of pounds. But let me tell you, If you look at the figures, the money that it would cost them to free the foreign debt is less than 1 month's cost of foreign war. 1 month's cost of modern war today is more than all the reparations added together. All of it. If you look at the amount of explosives and things that were used in the last war, altogether on both sides, it's less than one Poseidon submarine has, one single Poseidon submarine has in its power to destroy this world. Therefore, that's one means of reparations, free the debt, wouldn't cost it. The second way is this, sharing of power. In all these great places like the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations Security Council, there's never been one black representative, not one black representative as a permanent member of the Security Council. There's never been one black representative from the World Bank in a position to make decisions, nor the IMF. Put a black man to represent him there. You're not putting him in the Security Council because you're strong. You're putting him there exactly the opposite, because we have been weakened. Put him there to share the responsibilities for the peace of the world, but we need representations. That is reparations. I could give you some more, like a massive transfer of power. When we helped to destroy Europe, a few years after that, the Marshall Plan helped to revitalize Europe. But what they did to Africa over those 4 centuries and devastated Africa deserves at least an African Marshall Plan. That is reparations. So there are other means, massive transfer of skill and power. And I could give you other means other than a repayment of money. What do we ask for? I end with this. Reparations is merely requesting acknowledgement of the fact that the wrongs were there against us, a confession of that fact, and an effort which will make us able to make our full contribution as the black peoples of the world to the questions that can only be solved by a united world in an inseparable humanity. There are problems of ecology, there are problems of international terrorism and diseases knows no boundaries that can never be solved by one side. Everybody needs to be around that table to get together to solve the great problems of the future. The black man of the world must be equipped and put in a position to make his full contribution. We are asking to be equipped to make our own contribution and our full contribution for the establishment of a permanent peace in an inseparable humanity. Are we asking for too much? I thank you.
Part of the issue would be to whom and how and when. Reparations were the notion that we would be reimbursed on some level for our work in building America. That America, as you know, was built on the backs of cheap cotton, cheap labor, and free labor in essence. And so that in some level, once the slaves were freed, that they would get 40 acres and a mule, and that's why Spike's company is called 40 Acres and a Mule. So the reparations was the notion that we would get some sort of payback, which we have never gotten. And it's a tricky question now, and one that we deal with other countries. You know, we have some very sort of nebulous foreign policy in America, and when we fight wars with them and we win, we ask, in essence, for some sort of reparation. We got that from Germany, we got it from Japan. I'm sure when you see American companies rushing in to rebuild Iraq, we're going to be putting some liens against their oil, which is in effect a reparation. There's some stuff with Libya now, with that whole flight that got shot down. So it's not an unusual thing, but it's a tricky thing for us. And right now, the whole swing with the Republican swing is to not even consider something like a reparation system, but the whole repeal of affirmative action. So one of the things about me making the movie I made was that I feel, as the French say, le plus ça change, le plus ça reste même. The more things change, the more they stay the same, right? The situation that existed when my dad made the movie, that there was no funding in the arts. They were pulling back money for kids to go to school and special programs. Those very same situations are coming in. But now we have the technology with your little video camera, which I know you got on, to make our movies a lot easier.
I think reparations has to start from like a personal belief and a personal commitment to bettering yourself and your community. So money is an important part of reparations. A lot of the members of the black community don't have enough money, and we will need money to make bigger steps that we need to make for ourselves. But when you think about what we've lost over hundreds of years, it involves a lot more than money. It involves languages, cultural practices, families, family traditions, the African family, dignity, like so so much, and just what's been taken away from us, I think, in a sense, is the ability to do for ourselves. Certain issues that are particular to youth, and especially in Canada, that need to be addressed. The thing that comes to mind, first of all, is the way that the school systems and the criminal justice systems are kind of working together. Like, Black youth are being pushed out of the school system by, you know, policies like zero tolerance and what's that other one? Zero tolerance, and there's this like 3 strikes rule or something like that, and it's actually very closely linked to like what the criminal justice system has in terms of prisons and like juvenile offenders and things like that. And I think there's just so many factors that are causing young Black people to leave school, whether it be high school or university. There's not enough Black teachers, tuition is too expensive, the curriculum is racist, it always has been, not acknowledging work that Black people have been doing and are doing in this country to try and better themselves. And at the same time, police are saying your community has so much violence, you're killing each other, so we'll go and tell you how to fix it. And maybe that means, you know, every young Black man is cuffed when he walks down the street, you know, where's your gun, where's your crack, or whatever. So that condition that I think a lot of youth are facing today needs to be addressed. Black Youth United is working in Toronto, and we're a pretty small collective, but we're just like a non-profit collective organization that we're trying to work in the community, with the community, for the community, and just most of our events are kind of smaller scale. And we're just trying to empower Black youth to come out, share in our space, because we feel that even to have Black youth calling themselves Black Youth United in a space, and I mean, that is a revolutionary thing in itself. That's a very strong political thing to be happening. So that's one thing that's going on. And another youth organization that's kind of similar to Black Youth United is Youth for Reparations, and they're in Queens, New York, and they're kind of making similar moves, and I know they're doing a conference soon. So those are 2 things that are going on. There's also, I can think of more things in the States than I can in here. There's COBRA, it's an acronym, something about reparations. But I think that they're doing some pretty good work. And yeah, I feel that the issue is a lot more out in the open in the States, especially in terms of even like lawsuits and people taking someone else to court. I don't really see that as much in Canada.
There are a lot of people who have been involved in the issue because it was because of slavery reparations is coming about. But there were a lot of our ancestors who were involved in slavery who are also partly responsible for reparations. Now, the reparations issue seems to be pointed only in the direction of the enslaver or the slave master or the slave owner or the slave maker. So the slave is left trying to find some situation where he can hook up to, or she can hook up to. But in the real sense, reparations would not begin to take any kind of shape unless somebody or some people say, we are sorry what we did to these people. And the minute they say that they're sorry, or they acknowledge, or they validate the fact that these people were being exploited, it's good enough. That has not been done. Nobody has said that we are sorry for what we've done to these people. The question is, who is going to say that we are sorry? Because they told the red people that they're sorry, they told the yellow people they're sorry, they told the brown people they're sorry, they told white people they're sorry, but they didn't tell Black people they're sorry. Now, red got reparations, and yellow got reparations, and brown got reparations, and white got reparations. But Black didn't get no reparations. So therefore, law cannot be put in place. When you say you're sorry, the statutes change, the laws change. the legislation can be put into office, into flight. Until somebody says we are sorry for what we've done, there will be no reparations, because for reparations to happen, there must be law. There must be the law. And then through the law, you said, well, because of the law, we can demand such and such, and we can demand such and such. So the beginning hasn't really begun yet, but there's a lot of talk and conferencing and ideas sharing back and forth and emotions running high, and situations like this will provide discussions for people to have a forum on. But the objective is to get apologies. The objective is to get acknowledgement that we did this to these people. Who is going to do that? Some of these old corporations are still around, but they're not ready to say that we are sorry for what we've done, that we apologize. And so as soon as you say you apologize, as soon as you say you're sorry, you know what that means? That means, ka-ching, that means that you got to pay something out because you acknowledge the fact that you did something wrong, or your people did something wrong, or your company did something wrong. So therefore, reparations must first focus on acknowledgement, on validation for the wrong. And then, when the validation is put forward, we're talking years, vision, then somebody will say we're sorry, and then the ideas of reparation and then the ideas of making laws will come into play. But then again, reparations would demand money, bottom line, money. But it may not be money for reparations, because the last amount that was published was something like 777 trillion or something like that. But that kind of money, who's going to pay that kind of money? From where? How? So as a result, reparations need to take a different perspective and seek to get services in exchange for wrongs done. Services. Things like education and things like health, and things like people being allowed to get into their own culture.
To date, the reparations debt is calculated to the amount of $777 trillion. But who will pay this money? Will the legacies of companies who profited from slavery? Will governments? Will kings, queens, or monarchs? Who will collect this money? How do we collect this money? Who will it go to? Will the money go to me or you? Or will it go to a trust fund to rebuild our African communities in the diaspora? How will this money be handled, especially in a post-colonial era filled with bumps in the road? What legal claims have been made? What about racism? What about respect? Where do we start? But most of all, who is going to apologize? This case has been long overdue and always appears to be behind closed doors, but these are all the questions to be answered for the components of New World reparations.
reparations should be all over United States
and Canada,
all countries,
oh damn globe,
especially where all the black peoples live at, right?
Not the rich areas.
What?
The poor people areas, our areas. Seeing reparations should be everywhere. Seeing
Jamaica, South America.
You see this color? Reparations should be. Seeing big up to reparations.
We need to work for